You want to know which wide receivers you should start or sit in week 4 of the fantasy football season? Well, we're about to tell you. Welcome back, Endgame community. I'm Pierre. He's Chris. We're going to go game by game and talk about all the wide receivers that matter to let you know who should be in your lineup and who shouldn't. All right, first let's get this out of the way. Who are the wide receivers you don't even have to think about? They are must starts no matter what. Cooper Kupp, Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, Stephon Diggs, Devontae Adams, Deebo Samuel, A.J. Brown, Tyreek Hill, Mike Evans, Michael Pittman. All right, let's kick it off with the Thursday night game. Dolphins at the Bengals. I mean, when are we going to put Jalen Waddle as a no-brain must start? I mean, okay. But realistically, Jalen Waddle in this game, you got to start him, right?
Yeah, I don't think this matchup is quite as good as people think, but it's Jalen Waddle. The Dolphins offense looks good. I think you got to start him.
Yeah, I think people have definitely run out of excuses to fade Waddle. Look, he outproduced Tyreek Hill last week. Of course, you know I'm rolling with Waddle this week for sure. And T. Higgins kind of the same boat. I mean, you're probably never not starting T. Higgins. And it's not like the Dolphins defense should scare you. They're allowing the second most passing yardage in the league.
Yeah, you got to start T. Higgins. Plus, Xavier Howard probably going to spend most of the time on Jamar Chase. So Higgins actually gets a better matchup this week. Must start.
Good point. And then what about Tyler Boyd? I mean, we know there's room for 3 receivers against that Dolphins kind of leaky secondary. Is there room for Tyler Boyd in your fantasy lineup?
No, I'm not starting Tyler Boyd. I'm not. What he had like a 50-plus yard touchdown where like he broke a tackle, like 2 guys missed the tackle and he took it, to the house. Outside of that, he's doing nothing, hardly involved. I'm not starting Tyler Boyd.
Yeah, it's hard to know. I mean, the first 2 weeks he was barely involved. Last week, huge. I think he is startable. You could flex him out just because, like I said, my Dolphins have been definitely giving up some yards through the air, but don't force him into your lineup just because of last week. All right, now 2 very interesting situations here as far as receivers. Vikings and the Saints. Let's start with the Vikings. Adam Thielen finally getting on the board, doing something. How do you feel about him in week 4?
I feel like he's a guy you can start if you need him. I mean, on paper, the Saints defense is tough, but we got to think Marshawn Lattimore probably going to be shadowing Justin Jefferson. So Thielen going to have I'm not going to say it's an easy matchup because it's still a good defense, but the easier matchup, I think he has a chance to score again. Not a must start, but if you need him, you can start him.
Yeah, always scoring upside, but definitely going to be volatile. Look, this Vikings offense so far has been pretty unpredictable. I'll say Thielen, as usual, is startable if you need him. Kind of a third receiver or flex play. And then KJ Osborne, a guy that I definitely liked preseason, did very little the first 2 weeks, and then he outscored Justin Jefferson. Well, who didn't last week? I mean, do you think that he keeps that going?
No, I mean, again, it was the Lions. They don't really have a deep corner group, a secondary that where they can shut down Justin Jefferson and still do a good job against the other guys. I'm not trusting KJ Osborne this week. I'm sitting him.
Yeah, another case of don't chase last week's points. Don't think that'll happen again this week, so probably sit KJ Osborne. Agree with you there. All right, Chris Olave. I mean, look, maybe he's going to be the most impressive rookie receiver. They keep taking turns. Do you feel like you have to go with him based on this insane target share? I think 13 targets 2 weeks in a row.
Yeah, I think you have to. You shouldn't be scared of this Vikings secondary. It's not terrible, but it's not elite either. So I think you have to start Chris Olave.
Yeah, definitely. Vikings, definitely vulnerable to the pass. Olave has been the number 1 guy, but also another reason that I think you definitely have to start Olave. Injuries among the other receivers. Michael Thomas, we knew it was just a matter of when, not if. It's a toe thing, nothing serious, but still. How do you feel about Michael Thomas if he does play? I mean, are we trusting him?
I think if he plays, you have to trust him in your lineup. I don't like him as much as Olave, but he's involved, and again, not a tough matchup. So I think if he plays, you've got to start him.
Yeah, I mean, I'm very reluctant to say yes because you never know that like the dings are already coming. But if he's good to go, then I guess it's nothing to worry about. So you can start Michael Thomas. Jarvis Landry also left the game with an ankle issue. Doesn't sound like it's serious either, but he also hasn't done much the last 2 weeks. What do you feel about Landry?
Yeah, I mean, this is who Landry's been his whole career, right? He's like, if you need him, you can start him. Hopefully he gets some catches. Maybe he falls into the end zone, but Not a must start, more of like if you need him, you can start him.
Yep, feel the same way. And yeah, I guess that week one outburst he had was just kind of a week one thing until Olave was ready. Well, he's ready. Browns, the Falcons, two teams that have been surprisingly good on offense. So let's start with the Browns and Amari Cooper, now looking like a true alpha receiver. Do you have to go with him against the Falcons?
Yes, absolute must start this week.
Yeah, I'm going to agree. Definitely go with Amari Cooper. And Drake London, I mean, he's kind of cementing himself as almost a weekly must start too. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, it is going to draw a tough matchup in this against Denzel Ward, but I think, given the fact that it's just basically him and Kyle Pitts, I think you still have to start him. I'm not going to say a must start. I'm just going to say a solid start.
I'm going to say you must start him because, look, he's among the leaders among all receivers in target share. I mean, Mariota just keeps going to him, which is why Pitts had 2 down games to begin the season. And though Pitts kind of got right, London still had a good game. He's getting targeted in the end zone. I feel like London is a guy you just have to keep rolling with, and this matchup does not scare me. All right, Bills with the Ravens. We're expecting this to be a high-scoring game. It's going to be a battle of those 2-star quarterbacks, so let's talk about their receivers. Of course, you're starting Stephon Diggs, but Gabe Davis, I feel like he didn't really look like he was 100% last week, and of course, dropped a could-be touchdown. So do you roll with him against the Ravens?
I think you have to. He's had another week for that ankle to get healthy. Ravens defense, I mean, it looked a little better last week, right? They got Peters back, they got Humphrey back, but still, I think there's going to be chances for him in this game. I think you have to start him.
Yeah, like even if he's only 80%, which I think he'll be more than that, I'm going to start as many receivers as I can against Baltimore. I really believe their secondary will continue to be that bad, and he should be better. And it's not like he did nothing. I mean, he was sort of involved, so I'm definitely starting Gabe Davis everywhere I have him. And then what about Isaiah McKenzie? Like, he actually had a pretty good game last week, and now he gets the Ravens.
Yeah, I'm not buying it. Like, no, every time I think, like, okay, he's back, he does nothing, not starting McKenzie, not trusting it.
Oh, hard no there. Look, I'm going to say you can throw him in that flex spot. Not a must start, but look, he actually did something against the Dolphins. And again, this defense is worse, so I feel like you can go with McKenzie if you need him. And then Rashad Bateman, a little disappointing. I'm not seeing the target share I really expected. What about against Buffalo?
I think he's a solid start this week. Buffalo's secondary really, really banged up. I think there'll be chances for him. Just have to accept that he needs a big play. He needs a home run, kind of like a Mike Williams type. But or even a Gabe Davis type, since we just talked about him. But I don't think you can bench him because he always has a chance to hit that big play. And this defense, like I said, the secondary really banged up. So I'm going to say solid start for Rashad Bateman.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, he's kind of looking like he's being used like Hollywood Brown was used last year in Baltimore. He's getting those deep shots, and you know what? He's always got that upside. I kind of have to start him. And look, Micah Hyde, their star safety, is out. Maybe that helps with their chances to get that deep shot. They should have plenty of opportunities to pass if this is a high-scoring game as we expect. So I am starting Rashad Bateman pretty confidently in this game and hoping for the best. And then Devin Duvernay, I mean, it's boom or bust. Does he boom?
I mean, he can't score a touchdown every week. So, no, I'm not chasing it. I'm not starting him.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to happen, but even so, are you really going to take that gamble? You shouldn't need to this early in the season, so sit Duvernay if you haven't. All right, Washington and Dallas. Let's start with Scary Terry. Hey, he did better than we thought last week, got 100 yards in a tough matchup. Now going against the Cowboys. Does he do it again?
I don't know, because I don't know if they'll need to throw as much as they did last week, right? They were getting blown out. I'm going to say he's a solid start, but not a must start.
Yeah, I kind of feel the same way. I mean, you feel like Terry should be a must start, but this offense, you kind of don't know who's the guy going to be every week. So, I don't feel like you have to start him if you do have a higher end receiver, but he's still a pretty good start. And then Curtis Samuel, involvement was a little bit less last week, but do you think you still keep him in your lineup?
I think he's another guy who's a solid start. Not a must start, but a solid start as like your wide receiver 3. So, yeah, solid start.
I'm going to agree with you there. If the matchup isn't tremendous, then he's still startable, but not necessarily due for a breakout. And then what about Jahan Dotson? Quiet as we thought last week. Does he get in the end zone again this week?
I mean, maybe, but again, I'm not banking on that. I'm not taking my chances with that. I'm not desperate enough for Dotson in my league, so I'm going to say no to him this week.
Yep, I'm with you there too. In a standard league, maybe, but you're still kind of just chasing touchdowns, so I'm going to say you probably should pass. And then on the other side, you got CeeDee Lamb. I mean, it's not a no-brainer anymore because Dak Prescott is still not back, but do you roll with CeeDee Lamb against your Commanders?
Yes. I mean, look at what A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith just did to this defense. I mean, look what every offense has done to this defense. Yes, start CeeDee Lamb.
I figured you'd say that. Yeah, you definitely have to start CeeDee Lamb. Let's get a little deeper, though. What about Noah Brown? Look, Michael Gallup not playing week 3, and then we really don't know if he's going to play week 4, and if so, what he's going to bring to the table. So, assuming Noah Brown's still the number 2 guy there, do you even roll with him against the Commanders?
Yeah, I think so. Not a must start, but I think he's a guy, if you need him as a flex or you need to start him in this matchup, I think definitely worth a look.
I'm going to agree. Again, there's some defense you just want to stream against no matter what, and this looks like one of them. So I think Noah Brown is a solid flex play if you need him. Seahawks at the Lions. DK Metcalf finally did something. Look, talent eventually rises, but you know what? Will it happen again? It is the Lions.
Yeah, I mean, I would say, yeah, this is a great matchup, but look what they just did to Justin Jefferson. So I'm going to say just because it's the Lions and I'm not quite sold that this secondary is truly elite yet, maybe I'm, behind the times here. I'm going to say he's an okay start if you need him, like as a flex start.
Yeah, well, that's the worry is, look, the Lions have been giving up points, but not to the number 1 receiver of the other team. And there's now a theory that Jeff Okudah, their top pick from a couple years ago, is now a shutdown corner. I mean, let's wait and see. But you saw, like you said, Justin Jefferson did nothing against them. They've not given up huge plays to those top wideouts. Maybe DK Metcalf does nothing. So I'm going to say you could flex him, but temper your expectations. And then let's talk about Tyler Lockett. Do you think that maybe he goes off instead?
No, I definitely don't think he's going to go off, but I think Tyler Lockett is an okay, solid start this week because, like we saw it last week with Thielen, right? The slot guy seems to have the advantage against his secondary right now, and that's Lockett. And Lockett doesn't get the down the field throws, which are easier for Geno Smith. So not a must start, but a solid start.
Look, Geno Smith's going to the tight ends a lot. That's what he's doing. Lockett did have a good game in week 2. I do say, look, I feel better about him than DK Metcalf this week, but I can't say anybody in this offense is a must start. So I'd say he's a solid flex play. And then let's talk about the Sun God. I mean, really, we should have him as a must start every week, but let's go ahead and go over this. Against Seattle, Amon-Ra St. Brown.
Yeah, against Seattle, you have to start him.
No doubt, no question. Never again will we question the Sun God. DJ Chark. I mean, it is Seattle.
Yeah, I mean, he's got big playability. I'm not going to say a must start, but I'm going to say, if you need some upside in the flex position, he's a solid start.
Not going to lie, I'm going to have DJ Chark in a couple of my lineups this coming week, so I definitely feel good about him. And then let's get deeper here. Look, Josh Reynolds actually had a good game last week at 96 yards. Is there hope for him too?
I mean, only because of the matchup there's hope, but this is more like a desperation flex play for me. So, yeah, just because of the matchup, I'm going to give him a chance, but not a guy I want to force into my lineup.
Yeah, and I'll say no because, yeah, it's already getting desperate. But again, not like when they're going to face a team like Philly or Minnesota. Not necessarily going to have to put up as many points and pass attempts against Seattle. I don't feel like this is going to be as big shootout or anything. So I'll say no to Josh Reynolds. Chargers going against the Texans. A lot of questions about that Chargers team right now. Is Justin Herbert really healthy enough to be playing? I mean, he was okay. I don't think it's his fault they got routed by the Jaguars. But then what about Mike Williams? I caught that touchdown and then really did nothing the rest of the game. How do you feel about him?
Yeah, I mean, you got to be a little nervous about him again this week because Herbert, not 100%. And also this offensive line just took a big hit. He might be under more pressure. I still think, though, you have to roll Mike Williams out. It's just hard for me to bench him because he has such massive weekly upside. I'm not going to say a must start. I'm going to say more like a solid start.
Yeah, I kind of feel like you still have to start him because even though he really didn't get much in the way of receptions and yards, he still at least bailed you out with a touchdown. He can always get in the end zone. He could always make a big play, and it's the Texans. So I feel good enough about Mike Williams to say start him. And we don't know if Keenan Allen's even going to be back yet. So speaking of Keenan Allen, if he plays, are you just putting him right in your lineup again?
If he practices all week and doesn't look like he'll be limited, I think you have to start him against the Texans. If Justin Herbert's under pressure, that just probably means more targets for Keenan Allen. So assuming he's not, limited going into this game, you have to start him.
Yeah, I agree. Keenan's one of those guys you, for the most part, are going to play if he's healthy, and I don't think he'll play if he's not ready to go. So if Keenan plays, I'm playing him. Now, if Keenan doesn't play, what about Josh Palmer? He led the team last week, got, I think, 99 yards. Is Palmer still interesting to you?
Yeah, if Keenan is out, I think Josh Palmer is almost a must start. Maybe not a must start, but a very good start. So, yes, if Keenan's out, I'm rolling with Palmer.
Yeah, look, if memory serves me correctly, I think we both mentioned Josh Palmer a couple times during our preseason videos, draft sleepers, guys we want to keep an eye on. I'm not saying the breakout's here, not happening yet, but he's definitely a guy you want to keep an eye on. So if Keenan's not playing, I'm going to roll with Palmer again. Brandon Cooks let us down so much. Did so much nothing against Chicago, but he's still getting targeted a ton. He's also one of the leaders in target share, but it's just not coming to fruition as far as fantasy points. Does that change against the Chargers?
Probably not. And I know, Christian Kirk had some success against them and Trevor Lawrence had success against this defense, but this is still a really good defense. And we're talking about Davis Mills, not Trevor Lawrence. I can't trust Brandon Cooks in my lineups this week against this passing defense. I'm going to say no.
Yeah, I'm going to have to face the reality. Maybe Mills isn't it. Look, it's still early in the season, but this offense as a whole has just really struggled. And that Chargers defense, they didn't look great last week, but again, this might be a get-right game for them. So I'll sit Cooks. I think you can start him if you need him, but yeah, things aren't looking great. Titans at the Colts. Well, Robert Woods made an appearance last week. Just when we're ready to count him out, and then he leads the team in receiving. Do you feel like he can do something against the Colts?
Maybe, but just a guy I never want to see in my starting lineup, so I'm going to say no to Robert Woods.
Yeah, and to some extent, maybe benefited from Kyle Phillips not playing, guy who'd be getting some attention in the slot. Don't know if he'll play, but Robert Woods, like you said, maybe if you really don't have a better option, I think you can flex him for now because it's not a terrible matchup, but yeah, I wouldn't love it. Treylon Burks, we thought would get more run. He really didn't do a whole lot last week. Is this week any better?
Yeah, that was disappointing. He did play more snaps. That's the good news, but he didn't really get targeted. That's the bad news. So still a guy just going to be on my bench. Still waiting and seeing. I still think better days are ahead, but can't be in my lineup.
Agree. I think it's a little too soon. I think it's going to happen. To some extent, the Titans were up and Derrick Henry was looking good, so they didn't need to pass a lot. I don't know that they'll need to pass a ton against the Colts either. So I can wait another week and sit Treylon Burks. Bears at Giants. Technically, there are quarterbacks and receivers on these teams. You wouldn't know it from looking at the box scores. Well, let's talk about the Bears' so-called receiving core, which really, at this point, the only one we can even talk about is Darnell Mooney, and I think it's going to be a short conversation.
Yeah, not starting. What have the Bears attempted? 45 passes on the season? No, you cannot start Darnell Mooney.
It's so sad, and you really don't need to roster Darnell Mooney at this point. Not his own fault, but yeah, you cannot even think about starting him at this point. All right, Jaguars at the Eagles. Look, the Jaguars now look like they have a couple of viable receivers for fantasy. Start with a guy, I guess, is living up to his contract, Christian Kirk. So is Christian Kirk must start no matter what?
Yes, and even though this is a tough matchup, I think Christian Kirk's going to get, I guess, the better end of the matchup because it's unlikely that Darius Slay is going to be on him very much. So I think you have to start Christian Kirk.
That's right. I agree. And look, he's a guy who works a lot in the slot, move around the field. He's going to get those underneath routes. So yeah, you'd think as good as Philly's defense has looked, I don't think they're going to lock down Kirk. And look, I don't even care. At this point, you have to start him no matter what. It just kind of speaks to really how was he misused so badly in Arizona those years. And then what about Zay Jones? Had a huge game, and he's looking really good too. People forget this was a former second-round pick, a guy who was expected to be a stud receiver. Do you start him in this matchup?
I got to sit Zay Jones. He's drawing the tougher matchups on the outside in this Phillies defense. I just have a hard time putting him in my lineup in this matchup. I'm going to say no.
I'll say maybe, just because I think we both expect Philly will still score a lot of points. Jaguars are throwing the ball a ton, and they might have to throw it even more this week. I think just on volume alone, Jones might do something. So I'll say you could flex him. And then on the other side, of course, you're starting A.J. Brown, and you kind of almost have to start Devontae Smith. But I'll ask, do you have to start Devontae Smith?
Yeah, another great matchup for him. This offense is absolutely rolling. You have to start him.
Yeah, I mean, he exploded last week, but he had a pretty good game in week 2 also. So just forget that week 1 ever happened. You've got to start Devontae Smith. All right, Jets at the Steelers. Let's talk about Garrett Wilson first. Did miss some time last week, but came back. Should be good to go. Are we starting Garrett Wilson?
Yeah, this Steelers defense, unless somehow magically TJ Watt returns, this Steelers defense looks really bad. I think Garrett Wilson borderline must start.
Yeah, that makes sense. And we got a lot of Garrett Wilson questions last week. It's hard to say start him no matter what because it really depends who else you got. But, I mean, he's looking solid. It looks like we'll have another week of Flacco. We know that's his guy, so I kind of say he's a must start at this point. And then Elijah Moore, sadly, is not a must start, but is he flex worthy?
Man, I can't. It's weird because like the targets are there, their air yard, everything you want is there except the receptions and the yards, which is what matters for fantasy. So I'm gonna have to say no to Elijah Moore until I see this connection.
Yeah, I don't know what's happened anymore, and I feel like I worry is that the week that I bench him, he's gonna go off. Right, that's what's gonna happen the week because it's gonna happen, but can't guarantee it's gonna happen this week. Road game. Wilson's getting all these targets. Conklin's getting targets. The running backs are getting targets. I think you can, but it's getting pretty desperate at this point. So you don't have to start Moore for sure. Deontay Johnson, still been solid, even though the Pittsburgh Steelers don't have a great passing game. Is Deontay must start?
It's the Jets. He's a must start.
Yeah. You definitely want to exploit this defense. I'm definitely starting Deontay Johnson wherever I have him. Chase Claypool?
I mean, I'm going to put him as like a if you need him flex play because, look, we just saw Tyler Boyd, T. Higgins, and Chase do okay against this defense. So we know there's room for enough. I know this isn't the Bengals, so that's why I have him a little lower. I'm going to say if you need him, you can start him.
It's so hard for me to recommend Claypool because even with this defensive matchup, I just don't know that they're really going to throw the ball that much. So I'm just going to pass on Claypool. I'm really not interested in him this year. George Pickens made that one great catch, but that's kind of it. I mean, does Pickens get more action this week?
Maybe, but I'm not banking on it. I'm gonna sit him even in a good matchup, just not getting enough targets.
Yeah, guys, look, if it was just like athleticism and talent that determined fantasy value, that would make things easier, but it's not. He's not getting the volume. It's not a great passing offense. You're going to have to sit Pickens. Cardinals at the Panthers. Marquise Brown, a ton of targets last week. Does he do it again against the Panthers?
Yeah, I mean, this is 2 weeks in a row with a ton of targets, so I think he's not hitting those big plays, unfortunately, but if he's going to get targeted like this, you have to start him.
And you know what? As bad as Arizona's defense has been, that works in his favor because even though you think, well, it's the Panthers, they won't have to pass it. Yes, they will. That's how bad their defense is, and they're not really running the ball, so you definitely have to keep Hollywood in there. What about Greg Dortch? Again, putting up decent numbers kind of on a weekly basis.
Yeah, a flex if you need him. Not a guy I'm ever going to say is a must start, but if you need him as a flex, he's startable.
I'd say he's a pretty strong flex play in PPR leagues. If you're in a standard league, you can probably fade him because you're hoping for a touchdown, and he's not the number one choice in their red zone there. But I feel like Dortch is a pretty strong flex consideration. And then on the Panthers side, well, you know who they got. It's DJ Moore. How do you feel about DJ Moore? I mean, the Cardinals, like I said, giving up a lot of points.
But they really didn't. Like, they didn't give up a lot of yards and receptions to Kupp last week. They didn't, obviously not to Allen Robinson. He might be dust. I mean, I can't trust DJ Moore in my lineup. I just can't. Like, what are we hoping for here? He hasn't even hit 50 yards yet. I have to bench DJ Moore.
There's really no reason to justify putting DJ Moore in your lineup. I don't think we have to justify sitting him at this point, so I'm going to pass on DJ Moore. All right, Patriots taking on the Packers. Well, it's going to be hard to justify starting too many Patriots receivers if Mac Jones doesn't play, which sounds like it's going to be the case. So let's start with Jacoby Myers, who didn't play himself last week. If Myers does come back, how do you feel about him?
Look, maybe Brian Hoyer will target him a bunch. Maybe he'll be okay, but I don't want to take that risk. I'm sitting all Patriots wide receivers.
All right, I'm going to have to agree with you here because Jacoby Myers could get a few targets, but really, what's the ceiling here? There's not much, so I'm going to pass on Jacoby Myers. I kind of feel like we have to ask about Devontae Parker because he just had a huge game, 156 yards, but now he's going to be catching passes from Brian Hoyer, going against the Packers, maybe getting Jerry Alexander. So I guess that's still a no.
Yeah, no, not playing him. No, not playing him.
Yeah, and You'll definitely find I'm not Devontae Parker #1 fan here. Definitely passing on him. All right, now on the other side, we got Allen Lazard. Got in the end zone again. Can he do something against the Patriots?
I think he's startable. I mean, he's getting a decent amount of targets last week, and he has touchdown upside. So if you need him, you can start him.
Told you this from the beginning, and I'm not changing my tune. Lazard, always capable of a touchdown, but probably never capable of huge yardage. That's just the way he's used. That's just what he is. So, look, I feel like he can always be started in a non-PPR league. He's always just a flex in a PPR league. So, feel the same way this week. But what about Romeo? Romeo Doubs, everyone's favorite preseason sleeper. Maybe the hype is justified. I think he was on the field for 89% of the snaps, had a big game, had a touchdown. Is this happening? Is this the Romeo breakout?
I mean, it might be because they really don't have anybody else. So, again, not a guy I feel like you have to start. If you need him, you can flex him.
Yeah, I'll temper my expectations because Patriots are a better defense and, they might not really need to pass the ball that much. So I think he's okay, but I don't see him really building and having a better game than last week. So I'll say only kind of a desperation flex. Broncos at the Raiders. So start with Courtland Sutton. He's getting targeted a ton. Do you feel like he keeps that going? Is he a must start for you?
Yeah, it doesn't even matter. This offense can't do anything. It doesn't matter who the defense is. Courtland Sutton gets targets, and he gets targets down the field. You have to start Courtland Sutton.
Yeah, I mean, we heard that he was kind of the guy that Russ liked the most, and that's what we're seeing on the field. So Courtland Sutton looking like he's a pretty solid starter, if there is one on the Broncos passing offense. It's him. Jerry Jeudy did play. Didn't do a whole lot. I mean, do you think, though, against the Raiders, this is definitely a good matchup?
Yeah, I think this week you can feel very good about starting Jerry Jeudy. This Raiders defense, this is supposed to be a great defense. I don't know what's going on. I mean, they just made Ryan Tannehill look incredible. So you can start Jerry Jeudy pretty confidently.
Yeah, and he should be healthier, from that injury that he had. So no limitations. I feel I'm not going to say Russ is going to cook or anything, but I feel like Jeudy is a pretty strong start as well. Hunter Renfrow, we'll assume he'll probably be back from concussion protocol. So if Hunter Renfrow goes against Broncos, do you start him?
I think he's an okay start this week as like a flex because we know Devontae Adams is probably going to get a lot of Patrick Surtain. Might be more throws underneath from Derek Carr. So I'm going to say a start him if you need him flex.
Yeah, Renfro's always that guy who could thrive off target share. I think he's okay. Kind of a lower end flex to me, though, because they have another receiver who's emerging. That's Mac Hollins. We're definitely going to go in depth on him in another video. But for right now, how do you feel about Mac Hollins?
Not great this week. I mean, I know he had a monster game last week, but it's the Broncos. Hunter Renfrow more than likely going to play. Devontae Adams getting the squeaky wheel treatment this week. I'm not starting Matt Collins. I'm not.
Yeah, I'm going to have to agree. And I don't think that his one game this past week was like a total fluke, but at the same time, it's a different matchup. And Renfro's going to be back, so I'll sit Matt Collins too. Kansas City, going to go to Tampa Bay. Obviously, the quarterbacks are going to headline this one. But what about the receivers? Juju, Smith-Schuster had that one big play, but again, you got to worry about the target share going against Tampa Bay. How do you feel?
Not good. He saved his day with that one big play, but I just can't feel good about Juju, especially in this matchup. I'm sitting him.
Going to agree. There's some times where you can feel okay about him. Don't feel great about him against this Tampa defense. So I will sit Juju as well. I don't really feel like I have to explain this, but Mecole Hardman, I'm not starting at all.
No, not starting him ever.
MVS, maybe a deep play or two.
Same thing. Just not starting him. He needs to hit a home run to have any value, and I'm not banking on that against this Bucs defense. So no, I'm not starting MVS.
Yeah, definitely not for me. All right, but then we got Russell Gage. Look, I know Mike Evans is coming back, but Gage got a ton of targets, 13 targets, 12 catches, got that touchdown. Do you think maybe against Kansas City he gets similar volume?
Yeah, I think he's a solid flex play. I'm not going to put him in the must-start category because Evans is going to be back. But against this Chiefs defense, I think he's a solid flex.
Going to agree. Probably not going to get as many targets, but he's still going to be their number 2 guy. They're probably going to have to pass quite a bit. I feel pretty good about Gage. Not a must-start, but solid. And then we got the Rams at the Niners. So here's the question. Allen Robinson, dust or not?
I think at this point we have to assume he's dust. We saw a full year of it last year, and we've only seen, a touchdown? That's his whole highlight this year is a touchdown. Not starting Allen Robinson, no.
Yeah, look, I know we're not even a quarter of the way through the season. It might be too early to declare anybody a bust, but this might be one of the bigger misses of draft season is thinking that he could come back to form. I don't know why, but you can't start Allen Robinson until we see something better from him. And then on the other side, Brandon Ayuk did find the end zone, didn't do a whole lot otherwise, and that pass offense actually kind of looked bad. So against the Rams, how do you feel about Ayuk?
No, I'm not starting Ayuk. He saved you if you started him last week with that touchdown, but outside of that, not doing anything, and Jimmy G looks terrible. Not starting Ayuk.
Yeah, I'm going to fade him again this week. All right, now you know our take on all the wide receivers that matter for each and every game. Who to start, who to sit. What about running backs? You definitely need to know and make the right decisions there. Check out this playlist for everything that you need to know to help you win in week 4 of fantasy football.